Getting married in your 20s is one of the most dangerous things a Korean actor can do to their career. Some did it anyway, and for a few of them, it cost far more than they expected. Here are 10 K-drama actors who married young, and what they got for it. One of them lied about the year of his own wedding for 22 years. Another announced her marriage and her retirement in the same handwritten letter at 24. But first, an actress who turned down a major film role to plan her own wedding. Kim Hyo-jin first met Yoo Ji-tae in 2003 on a clothing brand shoot. She was 19 and modeling, he was 27 and already known for Attack the Gas Station and Ditto. And nothing came of it. She wasn't impressed by him either. She'd seen an advert he'd shot with his head shaved and wondered aloud why anyone thought he was popular. Then, sometime around 2006, they were both single, and Kim Hyo-jin mentioned to Yoo Ji-tae that there was a man she wanted to be introduced to. Yoo Ji-tae offered to ask his friend on her behalf. He took the man out for a drink and brought it up, only to hear that Kim Hyo-jin wasn't his type. According to Yoo Ji-tae, that was when his own feelings became obvious to him. "If she's 10 million times better than you, why am I introducing her to you?" was essentially what went through his mind. So, instead of helping her meet his friend, Yoo Ji-tae called Kim Hyo-jin and asked her to date him. She was in New York on a shoot at the time, and she told him that if he came to New York, she would think about it. For Yoo Ji-tae, apparently, that was all the encouragement he needed. He went to New York to win his chance. They spent the next 5 years together. By the time they announced the engagement, Kim Hyo-jin was 27, and she turned down a film role to prepare for the wedding. When the invitations went out, they were almost blank, except for their names and a number. A photographer who received one posted it online and called it the most minimal wedding invitation she'd ever seen. The number was 1,825, the exact number of days they had been together. It wasn't a coincidence. Yoo Ji-tae had deliberately chosen December 2nd because it was the anniversary of the day they started dating. It happened to fall on a weekday that year, but he wanted that date anyway, which fits with how he has described himself as something of a planner. They were married at the Shilla in Seoul on December 2nd, 2011. Their first son was born in 2014, and they now have 2 children. And Yoo Ji-tae still keeps count. When he was asked on a talk show, 13 years into their relationship, how long they'd been together, he answered 5,947 days without even pausing. Apparently, 13 years in, he was still keeping track like a love-struck boyfriend. Next is an actor the Korean press once called the Barbie doll. Han Chae-young was 26 when she got married, and her proposal came with a 500 million won diamond, a luxury car, and an apartment in the most expensive district in Seoul. By then, she'd already become one of Korea's most recognizable actresses. She broke through in Autumn in My Heart in 2000, playing the antagonist, and became the lead of sassy girl Chun-hyang in 2005. She was at the point in her career when getting married could have changed the entire trajectory of an actress's career, but the man she married wasn't another celebrity. His name was Choi Dong-jun, and she'd actually known him long before either of them became part of this story. They met in 1998 while Han Chae-young was still living in the United States, years before she entered the Korean entertainment industry. They stayed friends for years before eventually starting a relationship in 2006. Choi Dong-jun had studied business at UC Berkeley and was working in business and finance rather than entertainment. He proposed with a 5-carat Tiffany diamond reported at 500 million won, an imported car worth another 200 million, and a 158 pyong apartment in Cheongdam-dong. Korean media still calls it the 7.7 billion won proposal. When the boot of the car opened, balloons floated out with the ring case sitting among them. Asked about the expense, Choi Dong-jun said there was nothing to spare on the most beautiful bride in the world. Just seeing Chae-young smile, he said, was more than enough. They married at the Shilla Hotel in Seoul in June 2007, with the ceremony kept largely private. By then, reports were already circulating about Choi Dong-jun's wealthy background, and the apartment was 158 pyong in Cheongdam-dong. They went on to have a son, and Han Chae-young didn't disappear from acting after getting married. She continued working through the years, even as her husband remained largely outside the entertainment spotlight. And nearly 2 decades later, she describes it in very ordinary terms. "The man who bought the 5-carat ring is gone," she said, in 2023. These days they live like best friends, and questions about the proposal embarrass her. The next actor had an entire country joking that he'd stolen one of Korea's most beautiful actresses. Yoon Jung-hoon has been called Korea's national thief for more than 20 years. The reason? One look at the woman he married and you'll understand. He was 26 when he married Han Ga-in, who was 23. And they'd met on the set of the KBS drama Yellow Handkerchief in 2003. A dating rumor actually started before they were together. They'd been photographed having a meal with staff from both agencies, and the press decided there had to be something going on. Neither was particularly comfortable with the attention, but somewhere along the way, the rumor became reality. By the end of 2004, Yoon Jung-hoon had decided he wanted to marry her. He proposed on their 600th day together. They married in April 2005. Then came the press conference. When reporters asked about the marriage, Yoon Jung-hoon joked that he was one of Korea's 3 great thieves because he'd stolen Han Ga-in from the rest of the country. And there's a reason the joke stuck as hard as it did. In Yellow Handkerchief, his character loses her. The two of them are separated by a difference in status, and his character ends up marrying somebody else entirely. So, a country that had watched him give her up on television then watched him marry her in real life. And Yoon Jung-hoon seems perfectly happy with the accusation. More than 20 years later, when a YouTube host introduced him as a thief, he simply smiled and said, "Yes, I'm him." He got the girl. He knows he got the girl, and apparently he's still proud of himself for it. And the next actress got married and announced her retirement in the same breath. At 24, Kim So-hee made a decision most young entertainers spend years trying to avoid. She walked away just as her career was beginning. Kim So-hee first became known as the runner-up on K-pop Star 6 in 2017, then debuted that same year as a member of the girl group Elris, later renamed Alice. She also tried acting, appearing in Idol Recipe, Duty After School, and several web productions. Then, on April 26, 2024, she posted a handwritten letter to her fans. The first announcement was that she was getting married. The second was that she was leaving the entertainment industry. Her fiancé was a businessman 15 years older than her, and they'd been dating for about a year. Her agency confirmed that her contract was coming to an end, and that, after discussing whether to renew it, Kim So-hee had decided not to continue. In the letter, she told fans that she had met someone who had become a great source of strength to her. Now, she said, she wanted to begin a second chapter of her life as Kim So-hee, rather than as Alice's So-hee. And then she more or less disappeared. She occasionally posted glimpses of her new life, but there was no attempt to turn the marriage into a celebrity story. Then, in May 2025, an anonymous account with a large following claimed she had met her husband while working at a hostess bar. Kim So-hee answered it the same day. "What was that supposed to be?" she wrote. She had met him at a birthday party for an older colleague she'd filmed with. The people spreading it went further. They fabricated chat screenshots saying they'd seen her, that she'd worked at such a place, and they brought her family into the threats. By the end of July, she had filed, and the case had gone to the investigating authorities. From her trainee days to her retirement, she said, she had never once acted dishonorably. Then, in March 2026, she returned to Instagram with a much bigger announcement. She had become a mother. She posted photographs from her pregnancy after giving birth, and with her husband and their daughter, Rian. Until then, she'd kept the pregnancy and birth almost completely private, and her message was remarkably certain. She called her husband and daughter her treasures and said that if she were born again, she would marry the same man and become Rian's mother all over again. The next one was 24 too, but unlike Kim So-hee, she was giving up a career that was already at the very top. At 24, Go Hyun-jung was at the absolute peak of her career. Her life seemed almost too good to get any better, until she married into one of Korea's most powerful families. Go Hyun-jung had first entered the spotlight as the runner-up in the 1989 Miss Korea pageant, but Sandglass turned her into a national phenomenon. The drama dealt with the darkest stretch of modern Korean politics and pulled 64.5% of the country. There are places where a general election doesn't get numbers like that. She had met Chung Young-jin in New York when they happened to attend the same Broadway musical. Go Hyun-jung couldn't find her seat because she wasn't confident with her English, and Chung Young-jin happened to be nearby and helped her. He came from the family behind Shinsegae, one of Korea's biggest retail empires. His mother, Lee Myung-hee, was the head of Shinsegae, and his grandfather was Lee Byung-chul, the founder of Samsung. So when Go Hyun-jung married him in May 1995, she wasn't simply marrying a wealthy businessman. She was marrying into one of Korea's most powerful chaebol families. She was 24, he was 26, and Go Hyun-jung retired from acting. Her last major project was Sandglass in 1995. Her next acting role wouldn't come until Spring Day in 2005. During those 10 years, she had 2 children, a son in 1998 and a daughter in 2000. But the marriage lasted only 8 years. In November 2003, Go Hyun-jung and Chung Yong-jin divorced. Chung retained custody of their 2 children, while Go Hyun-jung received a reported settlement of 1.5 billion won. She returned with Spring Day in 2005, and instead of trying to recreate the career she'd left behind, she took on smaller and more unconventional projects, including films with acclaimed director Hong Sang-soo. Then came Queen Sunduk in 2009. As Lady Michil, Go Hyun-jung played a ruthless political strategist who could dominate a room without ever being the queen herself. The role earned her the Daesung at both the MBC Drama Awards and the Baeksang Arts Awards, and she has worked steadily since, including Mask Girl for Netflix. But in 2024, she finally explained what that decision to leave acting had actually felt like from the inside. On You Quiz on the Block, her first television talk show appearance in 15 years, she admitted that she had been so deeply in love at the time that she saw Sandglass as something getting in the way of her relationship. She had already decided in her mind that she would stop working, get married, and leave acting behind. When the conversation turned to her children, she became emotional. Because they hadn't lived together, she said she sometimes felt awkward and unfamiliar around them. She hadn't realized how painful it could be to feel not close to your own children. At 24, Go Hyun-jung walked away from a career at its peak because she was in love. She eventually rebuilt that career, but by then, she understood exactly what she'd left behind. The next woman married at 24, only to discover years later that her first marriage had never legally existed. Chae Rim had been working since she was 14. She debuted in 1994 while still in her second year of middle school, and by 2000, she was already carrying All About Eve, one of the defining dramas of that year. By May 2003, she was 24, already an established star, and married to singer Lee Sung-hwan, who was 14 years older than her. They had been together for 2 years, and from the outside, there was little reason to think the marriage wouldn't last. But 3 years later, it was over. They separated in March 2006 after having lived apart for about 4 months. The official explanation was the familiar one: personality differences. They had never registered the marriage. They had held the ceremony, appeared together publicly, and lived as husband and wife for almost 3 years. But the legal paperwork had never been filed, which meant there was technically no marriage to divorce. She went to China and built a second career there. She kept working in Korea too, and Dalja's Spring earned her a Top Excellence Award in 2007. But it was in China that she met the man who became her second husband. His name was Gao Ziqi, and they met while filming The Lee Family, where they played a married couple. Gao Ziqi proposed in Beijing in June 2014 in the middle of Sanlitun. He knelt down in public and sang her the Korean version of I Believe, turning the proposal into something that looked almost like one of their dramas. They married in China that October, then held a second ceremony in Korea for around 100 guests. Gao Ziqi had thought about their future in similarly romantic terms. He once said that if he had a time machine, he would want to go back and meet Chae Rim earlier, so he could have loved her for longer. Their son Park Min-woo was born in December 2017. Chae Rim and Gao Ziqi divorced in December 2020, 6 years after their wedding. She returned to Korea with their son, and from that point on, her life became much quieter. She lives on Jeju now. She started earning at 14 and saved enough across Korea and China to support herself and her son. But after the divorce, a child made her think about money differently, and she took other work because she wanted something steady coming in. When asked what her job was now, she said she's a child manager. 30 years of knowing how to look after people on a set poured into one boy's schedule. She may not have found the forever she imagined at 24 or even at 35, but she did find a life that she seems much more certain about now, one centered around her son on her own terms. The next woman was told at 23 that marrying young meant divorcing young. At 23, Lee Yo-won was already becoming one of Korea's most promising young actresses. Then, almost overnight, she was married. Lee Yo-won had entered entertainment at 17, after winning a modeling competition while still in high school. By 2001, she had broken through with Take Care of My Cat, winning major newcomer awards and establishing herself as one of the actresses to watch. Then, actress Jo Yoo-jung introduced her to Park Jin-woo, a former professional golfer who had moved into business. He was 6 years older than her and didn't waste much time. He proposed just 100 days after they met. They married on January 10, 2003. Park Jin-woo came from a wealthy family, and his father was a businessman who ran a chemical company. That was enough for Korean media and the public to start calling him a chaebol heir, despite Lee Yo-won's repeated denials. In fact, in 2025, she joked that even her own family was still looking for the supposed chaebol husband. Her eldest daughter had asked her where her chaebol dad was. But there was a much more personal reason Lee Yo-won had been willing to marry so young. She'd started working at 17 and spent most of her adolescence inside the industry. She got tired of the people and the pressure, she said, and had imagined marrying much later. Her father-in-law reportedly didn't want her to continue acting after the marriage, but Park Jin-woo encouraged her not to worry about what other people thought, and Lee Yo-won eventually returned to work. Their first daughter was born in December 2003, less than a year after the wedding. And Lee Yo-won didn't just manage to keep acting while raising a family, she went on to build one of the longest careers of anyone here. She returned with Fashion 70s in 2005, then took on the role of Queen Sunduk in the massive historical drama Queen Sunduk in 2009, opposite Go Hyun-jung's Lady Mi Shil. She kept working through 49 Days, The Horse Doctor, Avengers Social Club, and Green Mothers Club, and had a second daughter in 2014 and a son in 2015. 23 years after the wedding, Lee Yo-won is still married to the same man. The woman everyone assumed had traded her career for a wealthy husband got married at 23, had 3 children, and kept building the career everyone thought she'd have to sacrifice. The next woman married at the same age, and everyone had said the same thing to her. Han Ga-in was 23. Her career was taking off until she got married, and everyone around her thought she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Han Ga-in had been scouted off a quiz show and became a familiar face through an Asiana Airlines commercial. She moved quickly into television, and by 23, she'd won Best New Actress at the KBS Drama Awards. And then she married Yoon Jung-hoon. They had met while filming Yellow Handkerchief in 2003. She was 21, he was 25. 2 years later, they were married. The wedding was outdoors in April 2005, and the attention was so intense that the venue became chaotic, with reporters and fans surrounding the ceremony. Yoon Jung-hoon has since said it was such a mess that he understood why celebrity couples stopped having public weddings afterwards, but Han Ga-in wasn't thinking about the career she'd supposedly thrown away. She was thinking about the person she'd chosen. Years later, when asked why she had married so young, she laughed and called it the biggest mystery of her life. But then she explained herself. She had met a wonderful person, she said, and didn't want to lose him. Work would be there for a long time. 6 months after the wedding, Yoon Jung-hoon left for mandatory military service. Han Ga-in waited for him. They had 2 children, and her career carried on for years. Super Rookie, Which You He, Bad Guy, and then The Moon Embracing the Sun, the biggest hit of her career. When she's joked that she wouldn't marry Yoon Jung-hoon again in another life, she's explained that she married him at 23 and has already spent 21 years with him. If she gets another life, she'd simply like to experience something different. She made a choice at 23, built a family, and more than 2 decades later, she is still living with it. Everybody in Korea watched that wedding. The next man kept his completely hidden and managed to keep it that way for 7 years. At 22, Cha Sung-won made a decision his parents didn't approve of. He married a woman who already had a 3-year-old son and chose to raise the boy as his own. Cha Sung-won was 22, working as a model, and still largely unknown when he decided to marry Lee Soo-jin. They had met at a dance hall while he was still in school. He had actually hidden his age from her because he was younger than she was. Lee Soo-jin was 3 years older, a student at Awa Women's University, and already had a 3-year-old son. His name was No-ah. He wasn't Cha Sung-won's biological child. Lee Soo-jin had previously been married to No-ah's father, but that marriage had ended before she met Cha Sung-won. He married her anyway, and legally adopted No-ah. He and Lee Soo-jin had simply chosen a family life that the people around them didn't think made sense. Then they decided to protect that family with a story. For years, Cha Sung-won gave his wedding year as 1989 rather than 1992. That seemingly small change made the entire timeline look different. It suggested that he had married Lee Soo-jin before Noah was born, making it appear that Noah had been his biological son all along. The public believed Cha Sung-won had been a young man who got his girlfriend pregnant, married her, and became a father at 20. In reality, he'd married a divorced woman and deliberately taken on the responsibility of raising her child. It was a much less scandalous story than the one people believed. But they were worried about what the truth would do to Noah, so they kept it private. In 1999, Lee Soo-jin published a book about their marriage. It grew out of years of writing about their family life online under the name Noah's Mum, and the book described their relationship according to the same timeline. It said they had met when Cha Sung-won was 18, married in 1989, and raised Noah together from infancy. Noah grew up. Then, in 2013, he was charged with marijuana possession. Cha Sung-won publicly apologized as his father, saying that he felt a moral responsibility for what had happened. Noah ultimately received a suspended sentence. In July 2014, a man came forward claiming to be Noah's biological father. The story reached the press that October, and he filed a 100 million won lawsuit against Cha Sung-won. The man said he had married Lee Soo-jin in March 1988. Noah was born that May. They divorced in 1992. Cha Sung-won married Lee Soo-jin later that same year. So the man Korea had spent decades believing was Noah's biological father wasn't his biological father at all. Cha Sung-won's agency, YG Entertainment, confirmed the truth. Noah was Lee Soo-jin's son from her previous marriage, and Cha Sung-won had legally adopted him when he was 3. He said he believed he had given birth to Noah with his heart, and that he didn't regret the decision to raise him. He apologized for misleading the public, but not for becoming the boy's father. Cha Sung-won later explained the lie more simply. He and his wife had told a small lie to protect Noah, and they had never wanted their son to be hurt by the truth. The biological father eventually withdrew the lawsuit. And rather than destroying his reputation, the revelation brought a wave of sympathy. People had spent years believing he'd been forced into fatherhood. Cha Sung-won has also explained why he continues working. For him, success isn't really the point. He works to provide for the people he loves and give his family the best life he can. Chae Sung-won and Lee Soo-jin are still married more than 3 decades later. And if you think 22 is young, the next actress got married at 19 and kept it secret for 14 years. What would it take for a 19-year-old to marry one of Korea's biggest stars and keep the entire country from finding out? For Lee Ji-ah, it meant moving across the world, marrying in secret, and living 2 completely separate lives for 14 years. Lee Ji-ah was 16 when she first met Soo Tae-ji, who was 21 at the time. She was studying in the United States and went to a concert in Los Angeles in 1993, where they met through a mutual acquaintance. It wasn't an instant romance. He went back to Korea, she stayed in America, and they kept in touch through letters and phone calls until the friendship became a relationship. Then, Soo Tae-ji retired. He disbanded Soo Tae-ji and Boys at the height of their fame and moved to the United States. Lee Ji-ah helped him adjust to life there, and the two became much closer. Within a year, they decided to get married. She married Soo Tae-ji in 1997. He was 25. They lived together in Atlanta and later Arizona, building a private life far away from the Korean entertainment industry. Soo Tae-ji and Boys had changed Korean popular music permanently, and he was one of the most influential cultural figures in the country. They separated after he returned to Korea in June 2000 for his solo comeback. She stayed in America and filed for divorce in 2006. Then, Lee Ji-ah came back to Korea and became an actress. Her first major role was the female lead opposite Bae Young-jun in The Legend. She had no established acting career, yet she was suddenly starring opposite one of Korea's biggest stars. By 2010, she had become a recognizable actress in her own right, appearing in Athena, Goddess of War. Then she began dating her co-star Jung Woo-sung, and she was still carrying one of the biggest secrets in Korean entertainment. In January 2011, she filed a lawsuit against Soo Tae-ji seeking 500 million won in alimony and 5 billion won in the division of assets. And because the documents used their legal names, the secret was about to become public. On April 21st, Sports Seoul broke the story. Lee Ji-ah and Soo Tae-ji had been married. two of the most recognizable people in Korea had apparently been husband and wife for years, and almost nobody knew. Even people who had worked closely with Soo Taiji were reportedly unaware. His former Soo Taiji and boys bandmate Yang Hyun-suk said he had been shocked by the revelation. Much of it landed on Lee Ji-ah. People asked how an actress out of nowhere had landed a lead opposite Bae Young-jun and whether the connection had opened the door. Her endorsements disappeared, and she stepped away from public life. Lee Ji-ah had already told him about her past. She said she told him in Paris, during what she described as the first proper street date of her life. If she was going to walk around holding his hand, she felt he deserved to know everything first. According to Lee Ji-ah, Jung Woo-sung told her to handle the situation however she needed to protect herself and not to worry about him. The story broke the day before his birthday. He canceled his birthday party. Lee Ji-ah and Soo Taiji eventually settled their dispute out of court in July 2011, with the agreement including restrictions on publicly discussing their marriage. 3 years later, Lee Ji-ah finally talked about the marriage herself on Healing Camp. Being connected to somebody that famous, she said, meant she couldn't live a normal life. She cut herself off from people she loved and worried constantly about being recognized. She even joked that she had to live as though she couldn't afford to be spotted by a squirrel. She admitted that the isolation had taken a real toll on her. What she lost was the privacy she'd spent 14 years protecting and the freedom to live her second life without having to explain the first. And when the truth finally came out, it wasn't because Lee Ji-ah chose to tell the country. It was because the secret had finally become impossible to hide. In the K-drama industry, you can have a career or a private life, and for most of your 20s, you're expected to choose the career. So most actors wait. They date quietly, deny everything, and eventually get married in their 30s when the industry finally considers it safe. But these people didn't wait. Some paid a real price for marrying young. Others managed to build careers, families, and marriages that lasted anyway. And a few ended up with stories nobody could have predicted. So which one surprised you the most? And who did I miss? Because honestly, there are people here I only found by accident. And if you want to see the K-drama couples who stayed together despite much tougher odds, click the video on your screen.